Hello, everyone. You have David and Najir here from WatcherPass.com, and today we are joined by our special guest, Mr. Neal Bledsoe. He is the star of the upcoming Western film A Soldier's Revenge. He's a talented actor, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the project and maybe give us some insights into how the movie was made. So, welcome, Neal.
Hey, what's going on? How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I guess I'll start with our standard question. In this time, how are you doing? How are you doing in this new world that we're in?
Well, I have access to therapy and Quaaludes, so I guess I'm doing okay. But that's always kind of a relative question these days. I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. One of the things that I really appreciated about being in New York is it's really run the gamut on human experience. From kind of the sadness and terror and fear and uncertainty of lockdown, and through certainly all the death and the illness we've had here, but then really the beauty of seeing everybody come out in the public square in a really positive way in the last few weeks. It's been very heartwarming.
You'd think if there was one city that would persevere through adversity, it would be New York. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, either that or like Cairo, but I'm sure there are other cities around the world that equally persevere, but American cities, yeah.
And I guess one of the big concerns with all the lockdowns and everything is working. But you have a new movie coming out. It's out in digital. It's out on Blu-ray and DVD.
Yeah.
I do still have other things happening, so it's good to hear. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the movie and what it was like making it?
Sure. What do you want to know?
I guess the first question is, I think this, you'll know your history better than we will. This seems like maybe one of your first Western movies. So I guess how did you go about preparing for this role?
Well, I didn't have a lot of time, to be honest. I'd flown to New York and I was sitting with my agent having lunch, and I got a call from my LA team, and they said, we've got an offer for you to do a film with Val Kilmer. I was like, great. This is Friday. And this is Friday, they bear in mind. And I said, when did it start shooting? They said Monday. And I was like, okay. Do I need to give them an answer by? Well, this afternoon. I was like, okay, well, I got to go read the script. So I canceled everything I was doing, walked in my agent's office and kicked my heels up and told Sheila to hold all my calls and read the script. And, they, of course, wanted to know if I could ride a horse and all the rest of that stuff just for safety. So, of course, I lied to them and told them that I could, just so I could be in a Western with Val Kilmer. Exactly, just like riding an overly large bicycle to kick you and kill you. Yes, exactly like riding a bicycle. Well put.
That's nuts. That's exciting, but that must have been stressful to figure out. I mean, how long was the shooting? You had to figure out if you could go for like a month or.
Yeah, it was like 3-4 weeks. I had been on a horse. In truth, I had been on a horse once before that, and I was like, I think I was at a Catholic youth camp. I am not Catholic, but my mom, I don't know, for whatever reason, sent me there, and I rode horses for for a couple weeks, and that was it. And that was when I was like 8 years old. So 30 years later, when this rolled around, they were like, hey, can you ride horses? Like, yeah, absolutely. I went to Catholic horse camp, guys. I know what I'm doing.
They didn't ask you how well. Yeah, they just said, can you?
Exactly. I was imbued with the body and blood of Christ. I know what I'm doing. And, but I truth be told, I picked it up pretty easy. And, I don't know, you take to certain things really well. And maybe it was just my fear and arrogance, my fear of dying and my arrogance and belief that I could do it. And I would spend literally every minute, just riding horses when I could. And that's the real joy of working on a film like this, is it's kind of like a subculture. Like one week we had a bunch of Civil War reenactors, and these guys don't just reenact the Civil War. They reenact World War II battles. They reenact Desert Storm battles. They reenact Vietnam battles. They just go around reenacting. In fact, those guys told me one of the best stories I ever heard about a reenactment. I think it was like this. it was like a 250th, no, not 250th. It was like a 200th or like 250th, whatever it was. It was going to be a recreation of the Battle of Gettysburg, and all these guys came from all over. Now, the schism between the reenactors isn't North and South as it was in Civil War. It's between East and West. So when these two camps got together, no one who could agree of like which generals they were going to be. So they had to like settle it and do it on 2 different days. So this battle, this reenactment of this pivotal battle had in fact a civil war inside of it. And I was like, that is fascinating. So there would be things like that you could just ask guys, what your gear was, what this bedroll was. And those guys get incredibly specific. Or if it's the horse guys, they're coming in from Wyoming and they're all like old ranchers, and they love being on horses, and they love nothing more than to kind of teach you what you want to know. And in fact, then on the other side with some of the great actors like Michael Bowen and Jay Pickett and James Russo, those guys have so much institutional knowledge of being on a film set, from being in films with De Palma to Quentin Tarantino to even fucking Sergio Leone. Like they have an institutional knowledge of not just how a western's made, but like how a spaghetti western's made. So it was incredible to be able to lean on those guys that have 30, 40 years of being on a film set, and then on the other side, it's just like one of the things I loved really about making films as well is that it kind of feels like being like you're cast away. You're out to sea with all these people, and the ship may sink, it may get where it's going, but like you really have to rely on everybody in this really hyper collaborative way to make something good. And so when you have guys like that, from the trainers to the reenactors to the actors, it's and you can rely on them and trust them, it's a really special thing.
I was so excited to hear your answer to that, because the more and more I dived into the cast, the more and more it just became Charlotte's Web. Like so many people, so diverse, with really extended careers, and the young crew to the people that's the veterans that's been around all this time. It's just like you guys have really been into so many different projects. I can't even imagine the type of sidebar conversations you guys had and distractions of just going back to things. But I think it does really stem to one person, and the iconic Michael Pfeiffer. Just how was it to work with him? And then again, I started looking, I was like, I'm surprised you two have never worked together until now, or if I'm wrong, but it just seems like a match made in heaven.
No. We really did work together. And I think, the person that convinced Michael to offer me the role was his wife, Kaya. And they, I think they had a certain amount of faith in my work. And Michael's whole philosophy of how to direct and what to direct is through, he comes from an architecture background. Do you guys know this?
I did not know that.
No, I didn't.
Oh yeah, he comes from an architecture background. So what he kept stressing during the shoot was that he wanted to kind of build the architecture in the frame, and what goes on in the frame as far as like relationship or anything else that was between me and the rest of the cast. And one of the first things he said to me because I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, so I had read the thing on a Friday. I was in New York and I had to fly back for my first day of shooting that Monday. So I didn't have a lot of time to like sit down and really like comb through the script. And one of the first things he said to me, which is very generous and always a good sign, is like, if you feel like there's something you won't say or that your character Frank wouldn't say, just don't say it. And I was like, okay, that's generous, but I still have to really rely on you because getting some New York atmosphere in the background. The ambulance the death is among us again. I said, I'm really going to have to rely on you because I won't know this all that well. But we eventually figured out a good kind of way of working, I think, which is, we would sit and kind of really distill down what each scene was. And that's, again, where it gets back to these great character actors, because once you have those guys into it that are like, you know, that each come from different acting schools, different backgrounds of experience, then you're really starting to like play jazz with these other great musicians. And as an actor who's like, you know, I've done some stuff, but I'm only 15 years in. And these guys have more than twice the amount of time on sets, and I'm always amazed by how good people that have that much experience are, and Michael as well. So Michael would let us run and do quite a lot. I maybe took that liberty too far sometimes, but it was always in service of a better story, I think.
And you mentioned it again, but I'm shocked again that you read the script on Friday and we're doing on set on Monday, because it felt very natural for you. You kind of fit the role perfectly.
Thank you very much. I kept wondering who they had fired or which actor they lost when it was on set. So it was like, was it John Stamos or who'd you lose?
Well, there's no asterisk next to your name, so it doesn't matter.
I know. I appreciate that, guys. That's very sweet of you to say.
But
I felt like I was panicked and lying the whole time, but thank you.
Did you find that your character kind of grew as you said, kind of gained an appreciation for him, or did you kind of go from the start and just kind of go with your gut?
I got like I said, I think Mike is more really focused on the architecture of the scene, and we didn't have that much time to really dive in and get into the psychology. So I come from a theater background where I really want to like understand the entire arc and really have things nailed down and make decisions. But that's, when you get thrown into a project like that, you can't always take that time and luxury with that kind of preparation. So you have to just dive right in. And I had a really good friend of mine, the actress Abigail Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Abigail about it, and she said something that I thought was a really good piece of advice, which is when you don't have time to think about the whole, essentially you just have to make every scene as good as you can. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where I was just using as much instinct as possible. But sure, I mean, that first day I was trying to like fucking make my voice sound like Clint Eastwood. I was squinting way too much. I mean, I was a cliche. I was a facsimile of a cliche. It was, it was good. I think that the more, because part of it too is like once you get on a horse like that, and you're kind of make it look like you know what you're doing, and you've like lived on a horse and all that kind of stuff. So there's a certain amount of just that there's pretense to it. There's a certain amount of kind of faking it. But hell, guys, at the end of the day, making a Western, and that's pretty cool.
I have never acted a day in my life, but if I was ever to get on a horse, I am absolutely going to look like I've been riding horses for the last 20 years of my life.
Oh, exactly. And you got to do that Clint Eastwood voice. You got to do the Clint Eastwood voice, right? I mean, it's just like that's actually part of the danger of being in a Western too, is because so many of the people, so many of the actors we know and performances we love, they're so iconic. Mm-hmm. So it's like you end up kind of, unless you're careful, you end up kind of doing like, the Diet Coke version of whatever that is. I mean, it's like doing a mob film, right? Everybody just wants to sound like Joe Pesci or De Niro. And that's what you see those things like, no, we got a thing going on. You guys, no, hey, yo, we're guys from the neighborhood, and you're like, oh. And I've actually done one of those too. And I was just like, we're not going to do it like this. But, yeah, man.
That's a great point. Like you said, when it comes down to specific type of genres, when you're doing a Western, there's a certain level of expectancy that that you're going to get. That at any moment, this can be just that legendary film that everyone's going to refer back to for years and years. And I definitely think that that has to be a chip that comes on everyone's shoulder into taking roles as this. I was going to definitely say that. Your character, so Frank really had a lot of different dynamics throughout this film, and one that really, really, really stuck out to me, and I thought it was intense. I thought everything leading up to this moment was intense, but I thought there was just another added level of intensity and within your acting when it came down to the scenes where the kids were coming to look for your services. So Savannah and Luke Judy.
Yeah.
How was it to film a scene where you have to have almost pure anger and aggression towards probably two of the nicest kids that you probably ever worked with? Because they're awesome. They're awesome. I've seen them in so many projects, but like, how do you film a scene when you have to build that type of aggression and anger towards them? And it really did come off so authentic. It was really, like I said, one of the most intense scenes of the film.
Thank you. Well, the secret is both Savannah and Luke are, in fact, monsters. Luke especially. So there's a certain, I don't want to call it method acting, but they're just jerks. So I just use it. And I showed up drunk that day too, so that made it easy.
You're also method acting.
Yeah, exactly. I think that part of the thing that's really nice working with kids is they're going to react. They're going to react to a lot. They don't act a lot. They don't have. On some ways, like the real danger zone is when you get people that are like just a few years into their career. That are kind of like young people or that are really hyper aware of themselves, or in my kind of age bracket. That's kind of like the irony is the years that you kind of act the most, you're probably quote unquote acting the most as well. And you get to the later stages of your career, you just don't give a shit. And then the early stages of your career, you're too young to know any different, so you can react to stuff. So those guys, what I wanted to do is really affect them. And so, and look, it's like one of the other challenges you have in 2020 or that we have in this day and age is we have to have conversations around something like that, just because you have to measure comfort level. So I would always just check in with them and like say to the kids, hey, I got to kind of rough you up in this scene. Is that okay? Hey, I've got to yell at you in this scene. Is that, and of course they're just little squirts and like nodding. He's like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, throw me up against the wall. And you're like, oh, okay. But, but it's like, I hear the question beneath the question, which is just how do you do that personally when you have to get that thing professionally? Yeah. So, I think you have to treat them like colleagues and try to really affect them and surprise them.
Yeah, I was going to say just, as a fan and viewing the movie, seeing them in tears and how you're just overdawning on them is just like, I get both angles of the characters here, but it's just like, oh my God, they're so cute. And they're just in tears. Like, what am I going to do? I was like, we got to talk to this guy. He's a bully.
Yeah, right.
But an amazing job. And I think that's important. You bring up consent.
Yep.
Thank you. I also wanted to, I think my instinct was to make the journey of redemption a little simpler, and make it, because I think my feeling is when I see those kind of redemptive journeys and they're just plot driven, they're just kind of like, oh, this happened. And so this person feels this way. They don't feel quite as earned. And my hope was that there was something that felt, almost that it wasn't complete, that it can't be complete, that it's, that there hasn't been enough time that's passed, but it's just, it's the glimmer of hope that it will be,
I think what you're saying too is it kind of falls into a question we were going to ask. And I think this was the right decision because the original name of the film was Soldier's Heart. But like you said, if it's about the journey, then Soldier Revenge is definitely more fitting, and it definitely caters to the character of Frank way more than what the original title would have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
And the decision making of the name changing.
I think you know where Soldier's Heart came from, right?
Originally, no.
So Soldier's Heart was, Mike really wanted to make this a film about PTSD and about that kind of the psychological wounds that we carry from war. And
Right.
how that might make us feel like our worst selves, and how we want to hide those selves from the people that we love, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Soldier's Heart was actually the way that they would describe PTSD after the Second World War. They didn't, modern psychology didn't exist, and they couldn't necessarily diagnose what was happening with these people, but they had the same symptoms that we identify as PTSD today. So that was the condition as it was known. It's just kind of, it appeared that these people had lost heart. They were affected in some way that we didn't really get. And, so I think, so that's why it was originally called Soldier's Heart. I don't know quite the decision making and why it became Revenge. Maybe there was another movie with that name, or maybe they just thought that, I don't know, Soldier's Revenge looked spicier, or maybe they just thought I was too angry towards the kids. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I was, we were both thinking, like, the element PTSD was, as soon as you start the film, it's there. And I was curious because I mean, even in 2020, people aren't really having these conversations. People aren't really knowing how to diagnose it in the way it needs to be, in the treatment that needs to be done. So I was thinking, if you're going to go on that element in the Western, how do you address that to make it authentic? Considering now, way beyond that, it's still something that's really, wishy-washy. People aren't really being able to have the conversation to understand it. So I if I'm understanding correctly, that's why it was mentioned, and we know it was there, but it was never fully addressed throughout the movie, because it couldn't have been addressed, because it wasn't nothing that you can ever say, like, this is something, Yeah,
100%. It's not like, it's not like I could ride up to Dodge City and say, I'm here to see Mr. Sigmund Freud. Like that service didn't exist. It was like, well, we don't have Mr. Freud. We have whores, or we have whiskey, sir. Or we have shooting people in the street. And so, I think people are of their time, and I'm a big fan of history, and it's interesting to me that the more we know about PTSD comes at a time when we're really removed, at least mechanically, from the real true horrors of what used to be ancient war. I mean, think about the way that Romans or Greeks used to fight. They would fight from sun up to sundown in close proximity, essentially just stabbing people in abject fear for 12 hours and trying desperately to survive. That, to me, is really, really terrifying. I mean, just on a personal level, and that would probably haunt me for the rest of my days. Not to minimize what soldiers go through today, but just for contrast's sake, today we have drone pilots that might never go to the country that they're serving in a combat zone. That also have those same effects. And so it's just interesting to me that, like, the further we become divorced from the act of war, we're also kind of more acutely aware of its effects upon the human body. And so I think to bring it back to the Civil War and Frank, it's, we didn't have the language or the understanding of the sensitivity to deal with what was happening.
Yep.
And for that matter, neither did he.
So I want to go back to an earlier point you made. I think we just have time for a couple more questions, but you mentioned earlier about how, it's tough to do a Western and not, or I guess any movie really, and not fall into kind of the, cliche, or, in other words, the iconic roles that you've seen in that genre. But in this movie, you had someone that has one of those kind of iconic roles. You had Val Kilmer. So,
who? Sorry, who?
This method actor who made like one movie.
I think I saw him at craft service one day. Nice fella, great smile. I hope he sticks with it.
So what was it like working with him, and did he give you some advice, or did you just kind of let you kind of be your own character and him be his?
He just kept hitting on me the whole time. I mean, I'm so handsome, guys.
I would be flattered if that happened to me.
No, Val's great. He's such a I should just come out with this as my disclaimer. I'm really weird around celebrities. I don't know why, but I'm not weird like I'm kind of not Chris Farley weird. Like I'm not that kind of weird, but I'm also not cool. And like for whatever reason, I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to treat this person like a human being. So Michael's first shot between Val and I is us sitting around this like coffee table with each other, and we're having coffee. And it was so weird because Val's got his whole entourage with him. He's like, Michael's so excited. He keeps taking like sneaky selfies of himself with Val in the background, like just excited. And I'm like, this thing is so weird. And I'm trying to get to know the guy because he's my long lost dad. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to establish some relationship. He was like, so it's Val, right? Oh, cool. So what have you been working on? And he's like, I just shot a movie. Oh, which one? It's like Top Gun 2. Oh, cool. What's that about? You got a big part in that, or like? And I'm just like, part of me wants to, and it's dumb. I should just be like, you're my favorite person ever, and like I've modeled my professional, personal, and romantic lives on every character you play. I should just say that because that's the truth, but instead I kind of clam up and get weird. But he was so, the thing I was most impressed about with him is he was so present. And he made me feel very relaxed in our scenes. He was so easy, he didn't belabor what he was doing. And we shot some pretty easy stuff, which was kind of our first chunk. And then later, I got comfortable enough with him that I felt like there needed to be one of those kind of rewrites that just to kind of, because some stuff kind of didn't make sense. And I wanted to come in and just ask him about it. So I come in and I knock on his door, and I'm sitting there and we're kind of reading through the stuff, And this is one of my favorite moments that I saw of him. He still loves to fuck with people and really like tease them. And that Val's had some health trouble as well. So people don't necessarily always know what Val they're getting. And that was also kind of part of it as well. Like, because he's had cancer and he's recovering. So there's still that mystique. And so this costume, we're reading through the scene, and this costume girl comes in with his costume as like a different alternative, and the costume designer wants to see it on. And she knocks it, and she's so nervous. And she's like, I'm Mr. Kilmer, Val. Hey, hi. Would you mind trying this on? That's just we wanted to see. And he turns around with this like dead-eyed zombie drunken stare at her, and she gets so freaked out that she just puts it on the railing of the trailer and like scurries away. And he busts into the biggest grin I've ever seen for everybody in the trailer, and it was just beautiful. I was like, oh, yeah, man, there is that guy. I know that smile. I love that smile. So. Yeah. We talked a lot about that scene, and that was the scene that was kind of us, just that solo scene up on the ridge with one another. And it was one of my favorite moments. I walked through it. I was like, hey, man, does this make sense to you? And he's like, no, not really. I was like, okay, well, this is what I think is important in the scene. This is what I want to get from this. And this is what I think this is kind of what this moment is between us. What do you think? And so I was thinking about cutting this, and it occurred to me that like I wasn't trying to direct him. I wasn't trying to rewrite the scene. I was just working on a problem. Two colleagues were working on a problem of something in the script that needed to be fixed, and found a solution. And that moment on the ridge, I was just like, man, I don't know really where we're going, but I just trust this person so much. And it was some of the most simple, straightforward acting moments I've ever had in my life. And we got it at Magic Hour. It was beautiful. Really, really beautiful.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah, it is. Sounds like an old Western.
Yeah, right.
Looking into his smile and riding off in the sun.
Yeah, man. I know. Yeah, it was great, you guys. I mean, look, if I can leave you with any piece of advice, it's just if they ask you if you know how to ride a horse, Do yourself a favor and lie.
It's just innate. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Neal, for your time.
It's my pleasure,
you're busy.
guys. Yeah.
The movie just came out. It came out on Thursday, I believe.
No, it's coming out
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be out tomorrow. Yeah, just in time for Father's Day. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I got to go buy another bottle of liquor and yell at some kids. So I'll get out of your hair.
You're really method acting again.
Oh no, that's just my real life. I'm a terrible human being, guys. In real life, I play heroes on film. Pleasure to talk with you guys. Take it easy.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
And again, you can get Soldier's Revenge. It is available on Blu-ray and digital platforms tomorrow, June 16th. Definitely check it out. Support them and do this hard time through the pandemic, as people are still trying to release a lot of good content out there for people. So that was an amazing interview, David.
Yep. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. All right. Well, thank you. And as always, go to watcherpass.com for movie reviews, news, information, and recommendations. And we'll catch you the next time.
Fugitives.